a lot of you don't like to admit that Jake Paul can really box, and there's a good reason why. For one, a lot of you are annoyed by his antics, and quite frankly, I don't blame you, but that has nothing to do with the reality of his performance and what he does. Now, you can say the same things over and over again. He didn't fight a real boxer. Mike Perry's not a real boxer. But guess what? Mike Perry is a bare-knuckle boxing champion. And for those of you that don't understand combat sports history, the origins of boxing and Queensberry rules, for that particular matter of fact, is derived from bare-knuckle boxing. And of course, in the later centuries, they started adding gloves into the whole situation. And as a result, this is the sport that you see today. So let's talk about why a lot of you have this constant hate for Jake Paul. And again, I'm not speaking as somebody who is a fanboy of his or anything like that. I'm just speaking from an objective point of view as somebody who is a combat sports analyst. Here's something you got to understand. For those of you that are boxing heads, do you know who Adam Azim is? Do you know who Hamza Shiraz is? Do you know Lawrence Okoli when he first started out? Here's something you got to understand about these men. The trajectory that they are at right now is really no different than where Jake Paul is at, considering the 11-fight experience that he has going on. Where were these guys in their first 10 to 11 fights? I'll tell you where they were. They were fighting guys that you know nothing about, and just because they are quote-unquote classified as real boxers, you somehow have this imagination that, well, he has to do the same things that the other guys do. Look, here's something you got to understand. A lot of you don't understand that this guy has all the money in the world to cultivate his skills, to up his skills in any fashion that he needs to, and has the time to do it. Now, here's the problem. Suppose you, as the average Joe who has all of these things going on in their life, and you just decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to go into professional boxing or MMA today. Do you think that you could make the leaps and bounds that he did in terms of performance and things of that nature? The answer is no. And quite frankly, the reason why is because you just don't have all the time in the world, and quite frankly, also the financial freedom that he has in order to do that. Now, are there other social media influencers out there that have all this financial freedom and all the time in the world to be able to do what they want to do? Yeah, absolutely. But guess what? A lot of these guys don't have a warrior background. They don't have a killer instinct inside them that says, you know what? I want to wake up today and I really want to go hurt somebody and put it on them. This is something that a lot of you people who are not fighters, who've never fought, who have never trained on top of that, will never understand. Jake Paul, on the other hand, whether you like him or not, that kid is a killer. That kid is willing to hurt somebody in ways that you can't even imagine. And quite frankly, I think that's really an important asset in the fight world, in the fight game, as a fighter. And let me tell you why. You can get by as an athlete, a great athlete. You can get by as a great fighter or a lifelong martial artist and win by points. In the same way George St. Pierre has won many of his fights, in the same way that Floyd Mayweather has won many of his big fights with the likes of Sugar Shane Mosley and Manny Pacquiao and whatnot. But if you really want to finish people off and you really want those finishes, you got to be a killer. And make no mistake, what he did against Mike Perry showed exactly that. Now, why is it that a lot of you people still think he's not a real boxer, this and that? I'm going to tell you why. Many of the boxing heads, especially in a commentator side, especially in the YouTube side of things, they don't want to be wrong. And it will insult their intelligence, and not only that, their whole entire reputation if they were wrong. So what do? They go off of past statistics, past data. In other words, use whatever that is a tangible information in front of them to look like a smart boxing head. And if they were to say otherwise or get off that particular path or that particular way of thinking, well, then the whole entire boxing community online is going to shun them. They're going to be called casuals. They're going to be called fanboys of Jake Paul and things of that nature. I'm here to speak to you as an objective observer of this whole entire aspect of what we're looking at with Jake Paul, right? So he says that he wants to be a cruiserweight champion. And a lot of you sort of make fun of that idea. Well, here's the thing, right? A couple of years ago, when he fought Nate Robinson in a Thriller card, it's probably difficult to see that. But guess what? When you saw Adam Azim, when you saw Hamza Shiraz in the beginning of their career, did you say to yourself, you know what, this guy is going to be the face of Saudi Arabian boxing? Absolutely not. There is no way you could have seen that, let alone seen that the Saudis were going to hop into boxing and pretty much take over the game and make all these big fights that you've wanted to see. Now, speaking to the Saudis, and I'm going to be very careful about what I'm going to say here, but hey, I'm just speaking facts in terms of what I'm noticing here, right? Turki Al-Sheikh said that this whole entire fiasco with Jake Paul and Mike Perry was nothing more than a circus. Now, is he right? To a certain extent, but let me tell you why he's saying this. And again, it's not to pick on the Sheikh or anything like that. This is just to sort of give a glimpse idea of what many people think in their heads, which is this. They look at Mike Perry and they just think MMA fighter, bare knuckle fighter. I've already explained to you the history of bare knuckle boxing as the origins of which professional boxing came from. So that's that. The other thing is that you got to understand these MMA fighters, believe it or not, they're giving Jake Paul a way harder fight than any of these journeyman boxers that you see fight your favorite boxers that are on the prospect list right now. Whether that would be Jared Anderson, whether that would be Edgar Berlanga, or whether that would be the list goes on with all the names of different people that you see coming up in the boxing world right now. Johnny Fisher being one of them in the heavyweight division. All these guys are facing guys that know they're going to lose. When you're an MMA fighter and you're going into boxing, you have a lot to prove. Obviously, I've mentioned in the past about Clay Collard, former UFC vet, PFL vet, went into top-ranked boxing and beat some of their guys in the undercards, and that's an MMA fighter doing that. So these guys are here to win, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't see that. So here's the conclusion to this whole video. This guy, Jake, is no different than anybody that is your favorite boxer on the rise. That's number one. Number two, these MMA fighters are here to give a much better scrap in the boxing world than journeyman boxers. And you want to know why? I'll tell you. Tommy Jacobs, a guy that I talked to online, right, was the former captain of the British national team. Obviously, he went and served 12 years because he went and tried to axe somebody, okay? And I'm not saying axe in a Ebonics kind of way. Literally, he tried to bring an axe and try to, you know what, unalive somebody. Why? Because he was messing with one of his homies, and he does what good homies do, and that is ride for their homies. Anyways, he served 12 years for that. He told me about the realities of boxing and being a journeyman. He was even thinking about being a journeyman because he said, you know what, I could go box here, I could go box there. Some journeymans make more money than actual boxers who are prospects trying to cherry pick their way around towards their competition. So with that in mind, understand that that's the reality of an MMA fighter versus a journeyman boxer that you people praise your favorite prospects for. Number two, or number three, here's another thing. Being a social media influencer has this insane negative stigma around it. And I get it, because a lot of you were grown up in the 90s where you have what you would have called, let's say, a conventional idea of what a star is. And what exactly is that? Well, here it is. A star is somebody that's in the movies, somebody that's on TV. And back in the days, there was no internet. And there wasn't this niche following that you have in the internet today. For example, today you could be famous off of just making fishing videos. And in that turn, you would be classified as an influencer. So for the people that safeguard or gatekeep the idea of what it means to be famous in today's world, that is the reason why you look at him in such a negative light, not to mention the fact that he was also a former Disney actor on top of that. But here's something you got to understand last and foremost, right? I've mentioned earlier the warrior factor. There are just some guys out there that are willing to go and hurt somebody for apparently no reason. And you know what? If you can make a lucrative aspect about it in your fight career, then so be it. Jake just happens to be one of those guys, but he was also a guy that was in a situation where, you know what? I can make money off of YouTube and Disney by doing this, But you also forget that him and his brother were combat athletes from the very start. They were both wrestlers, I believe, in high school. I don't know about college. I think Logan went on to wrestle in college until he dropped out of college, but that's neither here or there. Point is, they are born and bred to be combat athletes, and that's just the reality of it. They just happen to have been in the wrong particular line of work from the very beginning, and that's just what it is. So here's the last thing that I want to say to this. Many of you live extremely miserable lives, and that's just being honest about it. A lot of you don't like your life for one reason or another. So you see a guy like that and you say to yourself, oh, you know what? I'm going to say the most negative things about this guy because you're self-projecting. Let's just be real about it. And that's just all that I have for this particular video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I will be back with another content, inshallah.